Paul Sporer joins us now, courtesy of the Progressive Guest Line. You can find him on Twitter at Sporer, Sporer. He's also, of course, the host of the Sleeper and the Bust podcast. He works at Fangraphs. He's also the content designer for Out of the Park Baseball. Joining us now for his 570th appearance on the show. I have no idea how many he's been on, but it's got to be in the 500 range, somewhere like that. Paulie, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Gilliam. Have you heard the phrase, judge me by my enemies? If Ricky Schroeder hates you, you're doing something right. That dude's a piece of human garbage. So awesome.
Yes.
The second that he says that he doesn't like me, yes, that means I'm crushing life because that guy's a complete loser.
Yeah.
Okay. It might be 500 career appearances, but I'll tell you, 2026, Paul Sporer has been something special. Yeah. He's coming in hot like every week.
There is something special when Paul Sporer gets animated about something. Yes. There's something special about it.
I enjoy it
because he saves it for
Dolly was wonderful.
Dolly was wonderful.
A true, real positive force in the world as a celebrity. Could have been a billionaire for sure, guaranteed. With the way that she could have made money off of her likeness, could have easily been a billionaire. Didn't. Tried to give the money back. Obviously didn't give it all. She was super rich. I'm not saying she was penniless, but she lived like Dolly and you're on the right track. I guarantee that.
100%. Can we just say it? We'll call her an American treasure. That's exactly what she was. An American treasure. Okay, Paul, I don't mean to do this now. I promise I won't do this moving forward. This might be the last time I do this, but multiple choice. The Tigers flirted with it. Oh. Then they swooned. I know they won last night, but it's kind of feeling like it's over. Are you pissed about it as a Tigers fan, or are you B, do you revert back to what you were talking about last week, which is I can't even work up the rage because the bullpen sucks bad and we knew this would happen?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter in a world where we go with the idea that they never address the bullpen. I revert back to the pissed part where they could have straddled the line here and really done a 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Get some relief help in June or July. Go early in the market. And I'm not talking big trade. I'm talking small trade / waiver wire. Just start churning in some different guys. Teams rebuild bullpens in year all the time. It's not even that difficult. You got to burn and churn a bit. And they weren't burning and churning enough. So when you're not going to do that, and then you trade Mize and Skubal, again, I'm not necessarily against those moves. I think you could have done both. If you rebuild the pen and even still trade one or both of them while still fostering a quality pen, they could still be in this. We see how close they are having traded both guys. So it's less about trading Skubal and Mize and more about leaving the bullpen to be the garbage that it is. And I don't know if I mentioned this with you or on a different spot, but Foolish Bailey, a guy named Foolish Baseball, his name is actually Bailey, did a video about the Tigers bullpen and kind of laid a lot of it at the feet of AJ Hinch this year. And as much as I love his content, I recommend everyone go watch his content. I don't agree. I simply don't think that he had the horses to work with. So Bailey highlighted a bunch of instances where Hinch pushed a guy to a second inning and all that, and then it blew up in his face. Yeah, but for the last 2 years, every button press that Hinch made seemed to work with the bullpen. And throughout all 3 of these years, this year and the last 2, the bullpen has been bad. They've been bad, mediocre at best players that he's gotten the most out of for 2 years, and it blew up in his face this year. Scott Harris has not given him a quality bullpen to work with. And from the jump, I always had that skepticism about the Tigers, even at the very beginning of the year when I was dreaming of, a big playoff run.
We got on the, well said. I can't add anything to that. On the group chat, we have a group chat. Steve Fezzik, Todd Wishnev, Chris Felica, Will Hill, and I. Will floated. Actually, I don't know if he did on that chat or another one, but Will floated. He's like, Royals, big streak. I mean, this is unbelievable. 100-1 to make the playoffs. I'm like, and I immediately was like, nah, man, it's just they're still too far back. I mean, the Tigers themselves are 4.5 out of a wild card.
Right.
The Royals are 8 back still, and there's too many teams in between them. 100-1, there still should be another 0, right?
I absolutely agree. I was literally going to say verbatim that too many teams and needs to add another 0, Gil. So we are locked in this morning because after a win 9 only gets you to 8 out. Again, with the teams. No, I'm sorry. You don't want to go there. If you're going to throw that money away, just give them my Venmo account. Tell them that that's where they're putting the money, and I'll just take it. Because otherwise, you're just burning it if you're putting anything on KC right now.
I don't.
Like you said,
I don't think he was steadfast about it, but he was just kind of throwing it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't even do it as like a quarter unit, little wild card play. Because as you're going to mention, and it's going to be the way throughout the rest of this month and into September, the number of teams is going to become more and more important. Like the games, we're going to say like Toronto's only 3 back. Yes, but 4 teams in front of them, that becomes a bigger problem than the games at a certain point. We're not there yet. But the further we get into September, how many teams are in front of you will start to matter more than the 3-4 games that you are behind.
Of all the teams that are on the outside looking in, and by the way, last thing about the Royals thing, it's just like the Tigers, right? It's like no matter how well you're playing now,
exactly,
you banked so many losses that the moment this win streak like goes into the tank, you're back to where you were. That you just
it was at a point, not to go back to my Tigers, but like where they had to play perfectly, and every loss felt catastrophic because like, oh, you lost, but it was one loss. You can't play that perfect, and the Royals built themselves even a bigger hole than the Tigers. So yeah, I agree.
Who's the team on the outside looking in right now, on either American League or National League? Now I know some of these they're gonna have division chances too. So
sure,
right now on the outside looking in, Rangers right by a half game in the division, but 1 game out of the wild card. Orioles 2.5 back of the wild cards. Mariners 3 back of the wild card, closer for the division. Twinkies 3 back in the wild card. Blue Jays 3 back. Tigers 4.5, and then in the NL. Diamondbacks 1 back, Marlins 4 back, Cardinals 5 back. We'll close it there. What's the one team of those, or maybe the 1 or 2, where you're like, this team is going to get there? Like, I still have faith. There's roughly 30 games left in the season, a little less. I still think they have enough runway to do this.
I want to say the Mariners, but I can't. I've moved off of them a bit more of thinking like, hey, they're just going to get there. Their defense sucks. And I'm not saying that like I figured it out and nobody else was saying that, but something I kept looking at, I was like, why are they struggling so much? Their offense was actually better this year, played pretty well at home. Their pitching is supposed to be so good. And you're seeing somebody like George Kirby carrying like a 135 whip. So I started looking into it. The defense is terrible. Infield and outfield. It's a big problem this year. I think it's undercovered that is hurting Seattle. I think that kind of pushes them out. So I come back to like the Orioles and the Twins, and I don't get the warm and fuzzies about either of them, but they've got a lot of talent. And I'm going to go with the Orioles as the pick here with one key, one big piece that could be really, really interesting. Felix Bautista is working his way back. And if they add him to the bullpen at, a pretty close to his peak level, that's going to move everybody else down in terms of need. And that's going to really lengthen their bullpen. I think they have the offensive horses to do it already. Baltimore does. If they can strengthen that pen by getting Bautista back, I think they can make some noise. And then 4 AL East teams that I could see it. Yeah, I could totally see it.
You and I are in lockstep because I feel this exact same way about the Mariners. And you pointed it out. This is a Joe Pita thing, which he does so great. What we don't capture is batted balls turned into outs, and how some teams are good at that and some teams just suck at that. If you get sort of granular. Last thing, B. Earl Nelson, Scooble scheduled to start Friday night in Detroit. They going to welcome him or are they going to boo him?
Ooh. Welcome him overwhelmingly. Anyone who boos is a loser.
You're a loser.
Thank you, Paulie.
Take care, guys.
You're here because you want an edge. That's what separates listeners from winners. But let's be real, mindset alone doesn't get bets home. Pros win because they've got the tools, the data, and the discipline. And now so can you. VSiN Pro gives you access to the same real-time insights the sharps use. No secrets, no fluff, just actionable info that moves markets. Tap the link and see why serious bettors are turning knowledge into profit with VSiN Pro. Nick Whalen joins us now. He knows all about fantasy. He is the co-host with Jeff Erickson of Prop Points. Follows us each and every Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific here on the network. Nick joins us now, courtesy of the Progressive Guest Line. You can follow him on Twitter at Whalen, but substitute the number 1 for the letter L. Nick, before we get your thoughts on one of these other categories, would you like to issue I know you're coming into town tomorrow for the weekend. Would you like to issue a public apology for blowing off Kelly last year? Would you like to do that right now?
Look, Kelly, we talked about this on the show last week. I got to be honest, I have no memory of this. I felt horrible in the moment. Gil told me like right before we came back from break, so I had to do the whole segment with this like stewing in the back of my mind. I mean, I would be honored to hang out with you at Circa. I can't believe that this was perceived as blowing off. I will actually be at Circa later tonight. I'm heading out pretty much right after our show ends, so I'll be landing about 6:30 local time. If you guys are scratching around the sports book, myself, Jeff Erickson, a couple other RotoWire guys we'll be out there through Saturday.
And you guys are doing the normal podcast Radio Row again this year?
Yeah, well, we have the final 2 shows of Prop Points before we hand it off to John Hansen. So we'll be doing those live over at the D both tomorrow and Friday, and then we'll be hitting Radio Row. We may or may not be getting a couple rounds of golf in while we're out there, and then doing all the contest weekend events.
Also, no apology needed at all, Nick. It was funny that you were locked in professional mode. That's all I noticed. And like Jeff was all giddy, to be in Vegas, and that was where it was funny. It was the contrast of you two.
And it was completely wrong of me to lay that on you right before the segment. He was just absolutely rattled.
Yes, with a heavy heart, I had to give out some plays.
Yeah, I want to ask you some fantasy questions, courtesy of the great Danny Higgins, who will be leaving us this week. So he wants to get his final fantasy questions in. But we were going through some season-long head-to-head passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. We wanted to do receiving yards with you as a fantasy guy. If you had any thoughts on these head-to-heads, we'll just sort of spring several of these on you, or actually 6 of these on you. We'll put them up all on the screen. A.J. Brown, a slight favorite over Devonta Smith. A.J. Brown, obviously former Eagle, now with the Patriots. Devonta is sticking around there in Philly now as wide receiver 1. A.J. Brown, a slight favorite. Let's start with that one. What are your thoughts?
I would go with A.J. Brown if you're saying just who finishes with more yards this year. And I can tell you in the fantasy world, we're seeing A.J. Brown being drafted ahead of Devonta Smith in high stakes leagues right now, which is the ADP I like to pull from. A.J. Brown is going about pick 16 overall, so just into the second round, whereas Devonta Smith going in the early 3rd round. Now, I do think we could see a huge leap from Devonta Smith. You wonder a little bit about the physical limitations for him at the NFL level, but I mean, you can make the argument that there's not been a more productive receiver at the college level in the last 10 or 20 years than Devonta Smith. But I do think the upside with A.J. Brown in New England is higher than the best case scenario for Devonta Smith in Philly. Part of it, of course, is the offense and the quarterbacks that they're playing with. I think we still have questions about Jalen Hurts, who feels like, you kind of see a different version of him week to week. I think if this hits in New England with A.J. Brown, it could really hit. I mean, we could be talking 1,400 plus yards, whereas I don't think there's that same ceiling for Devonta Smith in Philly. I think the absence of A.J. Brown in that offense this year maybe means that Philly goes back to being able to do what they want to do week to week, not feeling obligated to get A.J. Brown involved. And that means more running with Jalen Hurts, pounding Saquon Barkley, mixing in some Tank Bigsby. So Devonta Smith, to me, a very valuable wide receiver 1 in fantasy, but higher upside for A.J. Brown in New England.
Last year, when they were together, when A.J. Brown wasn't whining, Devonta 1,008 yards receiving, A.J. Brown 1,003 last year.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I think Nick broke it down well. I think A.J. Brown, his ceiling very high this year, potentially in New England. I don't know where Devonta Smith's floor is with Philly.
You like the A.J. Brown side.
I would bet this.
That's
one.
the first
this
one.
This was available to me. I would bet.
Is there another one on that list? We'll just throw up the list. So Kelly and I will go later. Is there another one on this list that piques your curiosity or that you might be a play on here?
Well, let me see. I think St. Brown versus CeeDee Lamb is interesting. I'm certainly not touching the Concepcion versus Boston.
I was joking with Danny before the show.
Want nothing to do. Yeah, I want nothing to do with the Browns offense. Although I do think there's maybe a case for Concepcion just being the short pass guy. I think when you look at some of these bad offenses and you're just trying to kind of manage it down to down, game to game, I do trust the guys who work more in the short area. And I think that would be Concepcion, but not a strong enough lean for me to bet it. I mean, I will say Stephon Diggs. I know you're paying minus 130 here, but Diggs versus Deebo Samuel, I think that's a pretty obvious one for me. Both of these guys are kind of in the twilight of their career, but Stephon Diggs was still 1,000+ yard receiver last year, obviously in a good situation with the Patriots, but Washington needs him really, really badly to be a high level number 2 next to Terry McLaurin. Whereas, I mean, with Deebo, I think I said it on this show or another show a couple weeks ago. I mean, he's a running back. It feels like he's kind of in like the Russell Westbrook phase of his career where he's bouncing around between teams. You still see the flashes every now and then, but it's just not really the same guy that he was in the past. And I mean, with the way Deshaun Stribling is coming on, they have Mike Evans, they have Christian Kirk. I'm not really sure where Deebo Samuel even fits in the hierarchy in San Francisco.
Yeah. Also, do you want to live through a year-long Stephon Diggs versus Deebo bet? Just of all the bets you can live through.
Do you want to have your money tied up in that? I'm not sure you do.
I don't know. That one I'm more okay with. I would think. I had immediate just what? When it Concepcion versus Boston. I'm like, who's going to the window and betting on the Browns rookie wide receivers to outperform one another?
That's right. All right, fantasy questions. Let's go speed round. Danny Higgins submitting several questions. Where do you have Christian McCaffrey ranked? And is he consensus RB3 behind Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs, whichever order you have those two guys in?
So McCaffrey is tough. I am not drafting Christian McCaffrey this year. With that said, you can't rank him like 35th overall. You know, there's still an obligation to place him like somewhere late in the first round, but I would take Jonathan Taylor over him. JT is actually going over Christian McCaffrey on average in these expert leagues. So I would say McCaffrey is closer to consensus RB like 3.5 at this point. The ADP is really close. I would take James Cook over him. I would take receivers, certainly like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, JSN, Puka Nacua, all those guys over him in the first round. It's just not a health bet that I want to make 2 years in a row. It's a little bit like Kawhi Leonard last year with the Clippers, kind of a best case health scenario. Like, are you really betting on Christian McCaffrey after that kind of workload, playing 17 games 2 years in a row? I am not.
How high should Jeremiah Love go for the Cardinals?
Well, I think Jeremiah Love passed the eye test for me before the injury in the first preseason game. Like he was alarmingly good. You know, I threw out the Adrian Peterson comp on our show, and I'm not saying he's going to be that kind of player, but just the running style, you know, kind of reminded me of that. I do think we're a little bit low as a fantasy community, maybe on the Cardinals offense. Like they're not going to be a good team. They're not going to win a lot of games, but this was a team that was piling up points last year. They were playing in shootouts every week. I think that could be the case again. So right now you could get Jeremiah Love into the fourth round. You know, if you're looking at him versus someone like Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, I'm comfortable taking Jeremiah Love in that range, but I'm not taking him over the Derrick Henry, Javonte Williams tier just above him.
Who is your overall number one rookie player in fantasy this year? Is it Love or is it somebody else?
I think it has to be Jeremiah Love by default, but it's a really interesting class because so many of these highly drafted wide receivers in particular, and even Jeremiah Love as a running back, ended up in what I would say are bad situations. You know, bad quarterbacks, bad offenses, new head coaches that we don't trust. So Jeremiah Love is going to be the first rookie off the board in just about any draft, but I'm equally comfortable waiting a few rounds and taking Jadarian Price, who, by the way, is down to 6-1 now for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Brock Bowers, worth an early round pick?
I think so. We have a couple guys on staff who are really sharp, who are just all over Brock Bowers. You know, I think there's the idea that, you know, kind of like we talked about with AJ Brown, where if this hits, I mean, we could be talking about an all-time tight end season. You know, he missed a bunch of time last year, was still putting up numbers in a terrible Raiders offense. I think there's some belief that this will be a much more competent offense this year, and there's just no competition whatsoever at wide receiver. I mean, it's what Trey Tucker and Jalen Nailor, I think, are your wide receivers 1 and 2 right now.
And then Browns-Falcons quarterback situations, how are those affecting fantasy as you see it?
They're not impacting Bijan Robinson. They're not really impacting where Drake London is going either. You know, you're starting to see Kyle Pitts slide a little bit with those concerns in Atlanta. Cleveland, though, it's really tough. It's really, really tough to jump ADP for even someone like Quinshon Judkins, where you just wonder, like, how many red zone possessions is this team going to have? Harold Bannon is somebody people are interested in, but we're seeing Concepcion, Boston still widely available late in drafts, which is not usually the case for first and early second round receivers.
Nick, thank you. We'll see you at the top of next hour, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Nick Whalen, co-host of Prop Points with Jeff Erickson. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the star of the Megapod, the Beating the Book Megapod, which premieres. What is it? Not next Thursday, the Thursday after that. Or earlier in the week, hopefully for week 1. He's also the star of the Showtime docuseries Action, and of course, the main star of Wishnev Wednesdays. It's Toddy Wishnev, courtesy of the Progressive Guest Line from Pittsburgh, PA. What's happening?
You forgot, and that guy is too fat to win. It's impossible. Did you see him on the show?
Yeah, that too.
That was another thing. Okay, we have a lot of topics to get to. Let's start with, in no particular order, let us start with the notion of, and you came up with this term, which I thought was brilliant, premature physicculation. What do you mean by that, and why should people be aware of this?
Well, I coined the phrase premature physicculation because we have a very intelligent friend. I will say he's a very intelligent fellow, at least about certain topics. And sometimes
Steve Fezzik,
when watching a game in gaming, he gets overly excited and wants to do something maybe before it is really warranted. For an example, maybe, a team scores 7-0. Immediately he wants to jump on in game that team and you haven't even seen the other team, with the ball yet, and I understand why he does it, because it's always a fine line between trying to get the in-game bet prior to the algorithm adjusting up, and the other side of it is being, too late when they've already figured it out. And especially in like college football, you see this early in the season a lot. They don't know anything about these teams, folks. These teams are completely different. Ask Chris Felica how many different transfers are on these teams. They have no idea. So, Brad Powers knows his stuff, but most other people don't, and they probably don't know how these teams are going to gel together. And so you're going to see some lines that are going to be way off, and they will adjust in the algorithm when everybody goes, "Oh, wait a second, UCLA is not that bad." Like for instance, I remember, some games where UCLA was like a gigantic underdog to Penn State. And, midway through the second quarter, you're like, wait a second, UCLA is better, and they were like, and then the algorithm was already on to it. But so I understand why he wants to jump out early, but sometimes a little patience is warranted. I find my best in-game bets, typically, not counting like quarter bets and stuff like that, but for full game bets, happen maybe 5 to 6 minutes into the second quarter. I've seen enough of the game. I've seen enough drives. I've seen, defensively, offensively, both teams. And now I can make a pretty good calculation. So be careful jumping to conclusions too quickly, which I call a premature physiculation.
Well said. And by the way, the man knows of what he speaks with in-game betting. He had a 187 unit to the positive college basketball season, all 1 unit bets.
Is that good?
It happened.
No, some were less than 1 unit, actually.
Oh, there you go. That's right. Some were less than 1 unit, but certainly not doing the 2 unit, 3 unit thing. That's how we got
not
there.
doing the shtick lach that many in the tout game do.
Whoa.
Shtick lach.
What are you talking about? They mean I know I'm down the last 2 weeks, but I've got my 10-star whale lock of the year.
Shtick lach, not related to crepe lach, which is very tasty, I think. Felica, speaking of our friends, he called, what he said, Seattle AL West with easy schedule. You like or don't like?
I think that I don't know if you're getting enough, because I haven't looked at the schedule of the other teams, but
easiest
like
remaining schedule in baseball. Easiest remaining schedule in baseball.
19 out of 22 against the Angels and the Athletics. That's like if I played tennis and scheduled Gilly Alexander, then Stevie Fezzik, then Gilly Alexander, then Stevie Fezzik, then Gilly Alexander on the road, then at home Gilly Alexander, then Stevie Fezzik at home. It would be just endless W's over and over, and that seems to be what we're looking at here, possibly.
Mean-spirited and uncalled for is how I would characterize that last response. Okay.
By the way, folks, Gilly Alexander was arguing with me the other day that he's super competitive with me, when in the last 6 sets we've played, he won a total of 8 games. 6-1, 6-1, 6-4, 6-1, 6-0, 6-0. And we've now installed, for the match in September, when I get it over there in a couple weeks, we've installed me over 1.5 Gilly games in a best 2 out of 3 match. So if I beat him 6-0, 6-1, I win the bet. If I don't, I lose the bet. Stevie Fezzik already betted at Novig at -118.
Are you done?
Over.
Well, let me know
Chris
when we continue.
Felica and me are on the under.
Yeah. I want to know what happened in that one set. 6-4.
Because all these games get to deuce, and then I mentally crumble. That was the one time I didn't mentally crumble.
Kelly, do you really believe every game gets to deuce?
Not every, but they mostly get to. They mostly get to deuce. He can laugh, but he knows it's
Todd's
true.
the most incredible clutch player.
Yeah.
Ever.
Okay. Now I'm not so sad about bringing this up. You took it in the keister in a WNBA thing, as you would say. Wings over 56.5 team total the other day. Let's discuss, though, seriously, the money management, the psychological aspect of this, because you handle it well.
I think that something we don't talk about enough in gambling is you have periods where you're making good bets and you're just taking keister shot after keister shot and you can't win. It's like I was on fire in WNBA. I was up about 22 units. I could do no wrong. Now I'm only up like 6 units because I just keep taking. I've probably made a bunch of bad bets too, but I've also taken some hellacious beats. The Dallas Wings had 56 points in the first quarter and the first 6 minutes of the second quarter. 56, guys. If you watch WNBA, 56.5 is absurd. 56 in the first 16 minutes is beyond absurd. And I needed a half a point in the last 4 minutes, and they didn't get there. They scored 0 in the including a girl on the last possession, 1 foot away from a bunny, and she missed it. So I guess the point that I would make, and I'm not always great at this, but sometimes there's always this thing to like, oh, well, maybe I should up my bets now because sooner or later I'm going to stop getting these terrible beats, and doing something out of the ordinary when you're in one of these bad runs to try to make back all at once your bad beats or your bad bets. And I feel like it's not the way to go. And, I've made the mistake many, many times in the past, and it's not like I never make the mistake even now, but it's just something to remember. The beats will stop, but if you force it, sometimes it can just really snowball. So don't up your bets to 2 units. If you're like a $100 bettor, don't start betting 200 and 300 because you went on a losing streak. You want to get it back. Just take your time, make good bets, keep betting your $100 a game. It will come back. But you have to stay calm because a lot of times also if you jump it up, you're not thinking straight because now you're trying to be too fine and too careful and stuff like that as well. So I think it's something we don't talk about too much. I don't know if you talk about it that much, Gilly, but I think it's something we don't talk about enough in the world of gambling is to keep cool and remain calm.
I'd agree. I would agree with that. We would get to multiple more topics here, but since Todd needed to spend a minute acting like he was Vitas Gerulaitis, a regular Eli Nastasi, we can only get to one more topic. Let's talk about the individual K at bats.
I was watching Eli Nastasi Connors on YouTube, 1972 at Wimbledon the other day. It was fantastic.
What is this you want to talk about with individual batters and Ks? Luzardo versus Ward. And you said the Wisdom if they're in the lineup. What do you mean?
Patrick Wisdom.
Oh, Patrick Wisdom.
So some of I've been doing decently on these individual at bats to strike out guys. And, it's usually like there's 6 different offers. And usually that means that the VIG on those is a terrible bet. Right. Usually when you have that many offers in a particular, sports book, it's usually bad. But I think sometimes if you can target in on certain guys who have horrendous strikeout numbers against a particular pitcher, for example, today Ward has faced him 10 times. Has faced Luzardo 10 times. He struck out 7 times. Patrick Wisdom has faced him 14 times. He struck out 9 times. They're not going to make these guys minus 160 to strike out. The worst you're going to see is like minus 110. Most of the time it's plus money, right? So you're not going to see like minus 110. And sometimes they just can't adjust enough. It's almost like an algorithm in an in-game scenario where they just can't adjust stuff. So it's something to keep an eye on, especially if Luzardo looks like he has good stuff today.
Thank you, Toddy. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, he is making the, I don't know if it's his first appearance on this show, certainly the first since when I've been here.
I think so.
I think it's his first ever appearance on this show. He is the content manager over at 4for4.com, BetSperts Golf. You can follow him on Twitter at Ry Noonan. That's R-Y Noonan. The famous shout out from Caddyshack is actually his last name. It's Ryan Noonan joining the show, courtesy of the Progressive Guest Line. How you doing, Ryan?
Nice to be here, guys. Pleasure to meet you. Yeah, I've been on other VSiN shows over the years, but never here with you fellas. So I appreciate it. And funny, I have Uncle Danny, who was a amateur golf champion back in '79 and '80.
Oh wow!
Back in New Hampshire. So he was peak Danny Noonan during the Danny Noonan release of Caddyshack. So he's a stick, lots of stories, but yeah, it's a dated reference that fewer and fewer understand these days, but I appreciate you understanding it.
I'm sure his friends didn't kill him with that back then. Oh, my God. All right, Ryan. Well, since you bring up golf first, let's actually start with golf because you do a lot of golf. You do a lot of NFL. You do like a couple golfers this week, and you also like a top 10 bet. What do you got?
Yeah, Tour Championship, kind of a weird end of the season. I'm excited that the Tour has been pretty active of making sure that they change the process as we move forward. This is East Lake Country Club in Atlanta, which we go to often for this, but it got a complete facelift. We see a lot of like renovations that come up over the years, and they like do a little here and there to the course. This place got tip to tails peeled back in 2024. So I wouldn't lean on a lot of course history. I think playing from the fairway is going to matter a lot, Gil. This got pretty unpredictable, thick Bermuda rough. This is a long par 70 course. So I'm looking for guys that really control a golf ball off the tee this week. So that starts for me with Colin Morikawa. actually led the field last week in distance from the edge of the fairway, which is a significantly better accuracy stat than binary greens or fairways hit. Like fairway hit is like yes or no, right? Where distance from the edge of the fairway tells us a little bit more of like keeping your ball in play, controlling the golf ball. Love this from Morikawa. He's absolutely dialed on approach still. Putting is hit or miss. He's not a great Bermuda putter per se, but he's just going to keep himself in play, which we really want this week too. The other was Tom Kim, a little bit further down the board. Very similar stylistic playing style from Colin Morikawa. Is going to keep the ball in play off the tee. Great long irons player. He's actually a tremendous Bermuda grass putter. So I like Tom Kim. You can probably get a pretty solid Tom Kim finishing position bet too, if you wanted to kind of avoid the top of the board and you're worried about Scotty or Rory, for instance. But Tom Kim, 48s, 50s are out there. It's a good week for each ways too if you happen to have access to each way betting. We can kind of cover some more positions this week since we're dealing with a truncated 30-man field. I like those guys in the outright market.
Yeah. All right. Oh, you like the Colin. You're on Morikawa as well.
I'm on Morikawa. Yeah. I think Tom Kim's a great long shot option. I'm with you on both those, Ryan. I'll ask you. So obviously, I'm on Morikawa too. So those guys aren't winning. So who's going to win this week? This is the last golf tournament of the season we can bet. Who's going to win this week that you're going to regret the most?
Oh man, my data and the modeling I did this week loves Patrick Cantlay.
Yeah.
I'm never making that click, Kelly. I'm never making that click when he's, in the 30s, in the 40s, where he spent most of the summer. He is admittedly playing tremendous golf, which is why, the recency of the modeling likes him quite a bit. He actually fairly nice history here. But again, as I kind of touched on at the top, I'm just really not leaning on course history here because this is a really different venue in terms of where they're at. It's the same place, but in terms of how it plays, I do think it differs a little bit from some of the historic East Lake stuff. So Cantlay would be a guy that I would be frustrated that I didn't trust my numbers, and I, made a personal subjective play to avoid and ignore him. But that would be annoying.
Copyright violation on the question. 5 cents in the till, please.
Mm-hmm.
Top 10, Victor Hovland, you say? You like?
Yeah, I like Hovland, Gil. He, another guy, really good ball striker, keeps the ball in play off the tee. He has the distance to get it done here. This is a place that's really mitigated around the green play. If you look at the leaderboard last year, the guys that were towards the top, they were towards the bottom of the week in strokes gained around the green. When Hovland's off, it's when he has to rely on scrambling and chipping. Really, we don't like him in those weeks. Actually, and also he's better when we have shorter shaved runoffs around the greens instead of like the thick aprons. And that's what we have here with the remodel. So it's a good spot for Hovland. Another great Bermuda putter too. So don't like the outright price per se. I think it's a little too short, but I would imagine he's in the mix. So top 5 with ties, top 10 with ties. I think he mixes this weekend.
All right, let's get to as many season-long NFLs as we can. Let's start with the hotly contested NFC North, where the Lions are favored to win the division. And then, obviously the market has it one way, but a lot of people have a lot of opinions. What is the team you landed on as a bet to win that division?
I like the 5-1 Vikings number. I think this team is, look, coaching is tremendous. I do think that we have a pretty decent historical outlier of Kevin O'Connell kind of being, I say, a kingmaker, but we've resurrected some pretty solid careers here. Really, JJ, unfortunately, seems to be kind of the only outlier that hasn't really been able to figure it out under O'Connell's coaching there. 9-8 with all the mess that they had last year. Really opportunistic defense, which I love. I think having a game plan for a Flores defense, especially outside the division where you don't see it all the time, I think gives them a little bit of an advantage week in and week out. Kyler obviously has some questions, but I just have some concerns a little bit with Green Bay, their defensive depth, their offensive line issues. There's so much natural regression that I think we're expecting on the Chicago side. They can kind of plow through that. And again, if they're going to want to score 42 points a game, they might need to. But I think that there's some regression there. And I have concerns about the secondary for Detroit, too. I think they're going to have to beat people, by running up the score. I think that gets a little harder to do when we get to the playoff time. So, yeah, I think it's a tough, interesting early slate for Minnesota. But I think if they get off to a good start, they do have Green Bay and Chicago to start. I think get off to a really nice start. I think I like over 8.5 wins, and I think 5-1 to win this division is a pretty good price.
Okay, this has gone well so far, but now we're treading into murky waters here. NFC East, who you got to win the division there?
I kind of like the vibes of what's going on in Dallas. The problem with Dallas, I think we all agree, is that we naturally pay a little bit of a Dallas tax just because they are such a public team, and typically will find that I like them, but my numbers don't necessarily line up with where I think their prices are. But 2-1 to win this division, like again, the vibes are a tough way to handicap something. There just always seems to be something off with this Sirianni Hurts situation going on. I'm worried about the ceiling of their offense. Defense is going to be solid without a doubt, but I'm interested in like the Christian Parker thing that they have going on there, bringing him over from Philly. It's not widely available, but some books will offer like assistant coach of the year. I think Christian Parker, like 18-1 is a pretty good stab. Maybe if you're interested in, again, not a clean derivative of a good Dallas season, but I think another way to say, hey, maybe there's a chance they win this division or they're going to be in the mix. I think Christian Parker is a good kind of caveat there. Again, the ceiling on the offense, if they stay healthy, they're going to be able to run the football, with the dynamic receivers that they have here. I think there's just a lot to like here. Just a ton. They haven't replaced like a single edge rusher that's dominant to bring in anything on like the Micah Parsons side, but they have depth along the defensive line. And I think you really need that to be competitive. And I think they have 4 or 5 guys that can contribute. So I'm in on Dallas this year.
The Christian Parker call sort of reflects that you do a lot of stuff with defensive stats. You focus a great deal on defense. Just curious on your way out here, defensive rookie of the year, where you don't have stats for these guys on the pro level. Do you have a thought in this market?
Yeah, I think it obviously ends up being a little bit, typically it's been top of the board's done very well. Last year was an outlier where we hit a 60-1, 66-1 Carson Schlesinger. Again, because I think we want to look at like high-end edge rushers, and we have some this year. I think some more that are better and more likely to have good seasons. But deep down the board, there's a couple of names that come in a similar model to the Schlesinger play last year. Jayshon Barham in Dallas. You can find 150-1s on this guy to be defensive rookie of the year. Also, Caleb Elarms-Orr, probably going to win the linebacker 2 job in Buffalo. These guys are going to play island games. They're going to contribute. They're going to compile some stats. Those are triple digits in that market. I think there's those guys should be probably closer to like 50-1.
Can't thank you enough, Ryan. Appreciate it. Great stuff.
Appreciate it, guys.
There she goes, our baby.
Are we ready for this?
You added her to your AAA auto policy. With 24/7 claim support, she's covered.
Our AAA agent, you're here too?
We're always here for you. Visit AAA.com/insurance to get a quote today.